This is Abe Friedtanzer from Awards Buzz, and I'm very excited to be speaking with Justin Kurzel about The Order. How are you, Justin?
I'm good, thank you.
Can you tell me what interested you in this project?
Look, it was just a really thrilling script that I came across. It was sort of sent to me by Zach Balin. That you sort of started reading it as a I guess a heist story, and then sort of 10 pages in it, you suddenly realised that the why these people were sort of robbing banks and kind of creating a kind of war chest was that they were there to sort of fund this, one of the first sort of domestic terrorist groups in America. So I guess the sort of the point of difference in this being a kind of genre film and sort of directly having a kind of conversation with I guess the temperature today was sort of something that kind of got me pretty hooked on the script. Um, and then the things like the Turner Diaries, I didn't really know much about them, and I guess how they've sort of these particular events were a kind of seed and a kind of beginning, I guess, of what the Turner Diaries were, and how they were reaching sort of many individuals and many kind of hate groups, and being used in a certain way. So yeah, it was a sort of combination of many things, but it's very rare that you sort of find something, especially in genre, that has a sort of has a direct conversation with a lot of what's going on today.
It's sort of alarmingly recent in terms of when these events are, that it feels and looks very much like a period piece in a lot of ways, but it's really not that long ago, and it's much more mainstream, I think, today than in this time.
Yeah, it was odd doing a period piece that every day sort of felt like it could easily be sort of set now, and um you know you could sort of turn the camera just to the right, and the story could sort of continue. But I think that's what I sort of liked about it so much, was that it was sort of, that it was a sort of story from the past that was sort of telling something into the future. And um, not many people sort of know really about the influence of this book and the beginnings of this sort of group, and how in a certain time in America they were kind of front page news.
It's very interesting the way that it's done, and it also the location adds another layer to it because it's this beautiful part of the United States that I think most Americans haven't been to, but it's also sort of dark and grim. What was it like actually shooting the film?
Well, we actually shot it in Alberta, so just sort of north of where the real events took place, and mainly because this particular area we were shooting kind of had a lot of period elements that were sort of still there. They hadn't been sort of the towns hadn't been sort of redone, and buildings hadn't been sort of renovated. So uh, it had this sort of Alberta had this sort of nostalgic, sort of old American kind of feel about it that I sort of remember in movies from the movies from the 70s and the 80s. So um, and the landscape plays a big part in these sort of environments. And it was a sort of big character in the film, and you get these extraordinary kind of vistas of the Rockies and the Badlands, and and then the sort of outer suburbs. So it was a really sort of important element of the film.
Were there certain filmmakers or films who influenced you in terms of the look of the film?
Yeah, look, I mean, I sort of grew up on those sort of films of Sidney Lumet and Willie Friedkin, and those sort of really robust, American sort of thrillers. So they were a huge sort of touchstone. I mean, even films like Mississippi Burning, Alan Parker's film, and the character of Husk, definitely was sort of molded or came out of the DNA of some of those sort of male characters from those sort of past films. So it was, there's one of the reasons that I wanted to do it is it definitely had a very kind of similar tone to a lot of those films, and that I grew up and loved.
Were you involved at all with the casting process, or were people already attached by the time you came on?
Uh, well, Jude was a sort of conversation that we were having right from the beginning, and Jude's company came on and produced the film as well. And Nick Holt I'd worked with before in a previous film, and just thought he would be really interesting to take on the role of Bob Matthews, and I guess bring a kind of you know there's a kind of pull that character has that you inherently need as an actor. And there was sort of something about Nick in terms of how easy he is with people, and there was a sort of charisma in him that I thought would be really interesting for this role. And also he's a fantastic actor. And then the cast started sort of building out from there. We're very lucky. We got Mark Maron, who is playing Alan Berg in the film, and offers a great voice there for that character. And and Ty Sheridan, Jenny Smollett. And so yeah, we're very lucky in the end.
Also, always happy to see Alison Oliver in something. I feel like she's very underrated. And
She's
Saltburn, same thing.
amazing.
She has this
Yeah,
smaller role that's just so impactful.
yeah. Both those two actresses, Alison and also Odessa Young, two of the most incredible, interesting young, actors about at the moment. So I was really, really fortunate that they came on and played two really, really important roles in the film.
Were there any particular challenges that you faced in filming it?
Well, doing a kind of genre heist film, with the resources weren't huge, so to kind of shoot something like that, and we weren't sort of flinging 4 or 5 cameras around. We were really, really specific and quite classic in the way that we were filming it. So that was a really big challenge. And just as the subject matter, there are days there, I think, when Nick gets up in the Aryan Nation kind of conference and then sort of spouts out this sort of hate speech, that kind of really comes home, kind of what you're doing, and the effects that those words have. So there were a couple of days there that were really challenging in terms of the real subject matter and how we were sort of bringing it to screen.
While this film is obviously about, an American domestic terrorist group, do you think that it will play differently in other countries, or that unfortunately there's enough similarity everywhere that it might be all too relatable?
Yeah, I think that I'd noticed in my own country in Australia, and I think there are certain instances or examples that have happened in the UK recently as well, that the world at the moment is pretty divided, and extreme groups are starting to get very loud. So I think that unfortunately, I think it's a sort of story that is hitting pretty close to a lot of experiences that many different cultures and countries are having.
There's a possibility that people affiliated with groups like that would come to see this film and somehow emerge not thinking they're the villains.
I think the film very clearly sort of defines the goodies and the baddies. I think that and I think that the end for the order, uh, was not great. It was, they were, I think that the film looks at, I guess, how Bob Matthews exploited people, and that a lot of what he was saying, in the end, he was questioning. And so I think that it sort of shows the lies, and it sort of shows the hypocrisy of the group. So I sort of feel as though they don't really kind of come off. There's no heroicism there. I think they kind of there's definitely a kind of focus on their failings as a group.
And responses have you gotten from public screenings at festivals?
Good. I think that I think that most people come out of it and are quite confronted by it, because it feels pretty close to home. It's and that it feels quite fresh. It doesn't feel like they're watching it as a period piece. So and then on top of that, it's sort of, the film lends itself to a kind of type of film that probably isn't made as much anymore. You know, there's something kind of there's a kind of throwback to the sort of thrillers that audiences used to get the opportunity to watch. So I think people have been quite excited about sort of engaging with and seeing and being in a kind of genre film like this again, and you know, been you know, caught up in the story, and yeah, and then obviously sort of what it's about is, you know, hitting home in a pretty strong way.
This is awards buzz, so I'm always curious to people who I'm speaking to what you've seen lately. Is there a film or a performance that's really sticking with you that you've seen recently?
It took me a while to get to it, but I saw Civil War the other day, and was really taken by that, and the ambition of it, and Kirsten Dunst's performance in it is really something. And then, you know, I've been a huge Sean Baker fan, and, you know, love Nora, and think the way he's gone about making his films, and the sort of singular voice of his films is so admirable, especially in sort of today's climate. So I think those two have been the sort of standout.
What's next for you?
I don't know. I've been working pretty hard the last 2 years. I've just finished a series called Narrow Road to the Deep North with Amazon that Jacob Elordi's in, and by beautiful novelist Richard Flanagan, who yeah, who wrote this Booker Prize winning novel. So we're sort of in the ends of finishing that. And yeah, I just directed a couple episodes of Zach Balin's and Kate Salzman's series Black Rabbit that Jason Bateman's show running as well, and Jude Law. So I've done a couple episodes of those in New York, and that was really fantastic and great fun to work with those guys. They're a great bunch of people, and yeah, I'm just sort of looking ahead. There's a few projects around. I'm just sort of trying to see which one wants to get made.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to seeing those and wish you plenty of luck. Thanks for taking
Thank
some
you.
time to speak
Cheers.
with me.